How we doing, guys? And happy Monday night to everyone. It is Richie of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast here with my co-host, Mr. Mike Zappy. Doing something a little different on this show. It's called Questions, Concerns, and Our Brutally Honest NFL Takes. This is an NFL-based show, and we have no banners. We have no direction. We are going to have literally an open conversation about what we think is happening right now in the NFL.
And, on today, I will say one thing is while everyone is outside barbecuing their steaks or whatever the case may be, remember the reason why we're celebrating today. And it's not to remember the people that are alive, are veterans like myself. It's to remember the people that have fallen in combat defending this great country.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for your service, by the way. I want to make that clear. I appreciate you, Zap.
You can thank me in November. But anyways, yeah, man, I'm pumped, dude. Because I don't know what the topics are about. I'm pumped. As long as we're NFL, like, shoot it my way. I'm ready because you know me, man. I love talking football. But whenever we have long conversations about football in general, that does not require us to actually do any type of studying, or it's like it makes for great sports talk, in my opinion.
In the spirit of Memorial Day and in just the spirit of service, Pat Tillman, one of the toughest SOBs ever on a football field. One thing that I truly enjoyed about him as a human is that he never saw the game as bigger than what it was. He saw it as a game. He lost his life, sadly, wanting to serve his country. I feel that it takes a special kind of individual, what he did. And I guess my question to you is, what are your thoughts on his legacy before we move it along directly into?
I mean, it's funny you bring up that topic because next year is going to be 20 years since his death after he left the Arizona Cardinals to go serve this great country. And this was right after 9/11. So, he had the American dream, the real young man American dream, playing peewee football, playing middle school, high school, college, being a great safety at Arizona State, and then getting drafted by your home state and going to play for the Cardinals. He didn't have to do what he did, but he did it anyways because he was a selfless man and he was worried more about the bigger picture. Like, what Pat Tillman did for this country, and everyone will always say he didn't do it for the fame. That was just the person he was. And then it was unfortunate the way he died was in friendly fire, but it doesn't take away from the person he was in the NFL, outside the NFL, in college, high school. Every person that has been interviewed to say something about Pat Tillman has always had nothing but positive things to say about the individual. And that goes without saying, considering his whole story that the people do actually know.
Something that I find interesting, an excerpt of what Michael Strahan mentioned, probably going back, I would say, about 3 years ago, when there was a big conflict about players kneeling versus players standing. Michael Strahan said that knowing the kind of person that Pat Tillman was and how he was just kind of liked by every walk of every player in the league during his time in the league, that he actually thinks that Pat may have very well taken the knee with him on solidarity of the brotherhood of teammates, not necessarily making it even about the other stuff. And I think that in itself speaks very much so on the kind of human being that Pat was on a lot of levels. A very free thinker, for lack of a better word. And I guess the reason I brought him up on Today of All Days is because personally, I want to say thank you. There's so much more that could be said, but I'm going to leave it there for now. Brutally honest NFL takes. I got one for you. I'm going to ask you a simple question.
Oh, bring it.
I don't think he's going to the Giants. But do you think that signing a guy like a DeAndre Hopkins is telling Saquon Barkley that's why you need to take maybe a little under that 16 or that 15.5 because we're trying to do something different here? And then by no means am I saying the Giants are going to make this move, but thinking outside the box, that could be the kind of move that shows your players similar to what OBJ, Lamar, that situation out in Baltimore. What are your thoughts?
So that makes a lot of sense, man. Like, I think the Giants are a team that needs to go get DeAndre because I don't think Saquon necessarily wants to leave, but I think he wants to get paid if he's going to be featured as the only offensive weapon. But when you bring in a DeAndre, it's, he's 30. He'll be 31 when the season starts, but he still has a good 3 to 5 years left in him of good quality football as the number one receiver. Let's hands down, he's one of the better receivers to have ever played the game, especially during our lifetime where the NFL has evolved around the receiver position. I think if you could bring him in, that convinces a Saquon Barkley that you are all in to win right now, instead of saying, look, we're going to continue to let DJ progress. We're going to continue with the youth route. I think you bring a DeAndre Hopkins, it's showing not only Saquon, but it's showing your young team that, hey, we're about winning now. Like, yeah, don't let them put us up there with the New York Jets, or don't let them put us up there with the Eagles or the Cowboys of the NFC East. Let them continue to talk. We're going to continue to do our thing, and we're going to go get a DeAndre. DeAndre just makes too much sense in New York because, like the Lions, they are a team that's win now, but there's no expectations for them to do it. While the Lions, they're kind of expected to, even though they had to finish off the season the way they did, they're expected this year to be a winning team. But I don't think DeAndre will go to Detroit because it's Detroit. It has nothing to do with the team. Talking about the media, you're talking about all that. Give me DeAndre with the Giants, man, and I think Saquon signs a 3-year deal valued at we'll go with valued at $42 million with $19 million guaranteed.
All right, your turn. Throw one at me.
Ooh, man, I get to throw one at you. All right. The fantasy football season is upon us. The last few years, we have lived under certain receivers. But for the last couple of years, we've also seen the emergence of Justin Jefferson, but now he has lost Adam Thielen, and you insert Jordan Addison into that offense. Then we have Jamar Chase. They got T. Higgins back. They still have Taj Boyd, a good young team. You still have Joe Burrow at the helm. Who are your 3 picks in the NFL to be the top 3 receivers in fantasy football and leading the league?
All right. I've got Stephon Diggs.
Ooh, number 1. Okay. Now let me ask you, if DeAndre Hopkins gets brought into Stephon Diggs, does Hopkins help Stephon or hurt him?
I don't think it happens, so it's not a thought I'm going to have. And I said it on a previous show. I think it's because the D-Hop Diggs element, too much alpha dog, not enough to go around, so to speak.
Okay.
That's my take there. But I'm going to say Stephon Diggs will be among the top 3. Justin Jefferson, even without Adam Thielen, will be amongst the top 3. And I'm going to have a reemergence of Cooper Kupp, even though the Rams are going to be a bad football team.
I like it. I will tell you, I believe that Justin Jefferson, even without Adam Thielen. He still has Kirk Cousins. The funny thing about the Vikings is they have to pay Kirk and Justin, but we've been talking about it. I think Kirk Cousins is gone after this year. You're going to likely go the rookie route unless there's a quarterback veteran out there that you could bring in to win now. I still think the Vikings are kind of going into the rebuild mode, but not necessarily rebuilding all the way. Justin Jefferson's about to have a big year. I think Kirk Cousins is about to have a big year too. But I think Justin, you pay him, you let Kirk walk, and then you go from there. Jamar Chase, I expect him to have himself a very big year this year, where he's once again another player that's coming up to the contract time that, hey, I see these receivers getting $30 million or $28.5. I think him and JJ want to get paid. Justin will be first, obviously, but Jamar is now writing his story too. He's got another year after Justin. And the third one, who I expect to have himself a big offensive output, while I love the Stephon Diggs pick, is CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb now has himself an Amari Cooper type of player in Brandon Cooks. And we saw the chemistry build between CeeDee Lamb and Dak last year, and that's after the chemistry has been showing since his rookie year. I think the addition of Brandon Cooks to that offense is going to take so much off of CeeDee Lamb, where now CeeDee Lamb can line up in the slot where Brandon Cooks can line up outside, and that's where CeeDee Lamb is even more dangerous, is in the slot. So I'm taking, those are my three: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb. Cooper Kupp is close, but I think that offense is going to have a lot more questions. I can't see a scenario where we're talking about a 2019 LA Rams or anything like that, because back then they didn't have all these question marks. Fast forward to now, they do.
I think part of my motivation with Cup is that they're going to be playing from behind a lot, and I think some of that stat line could be garbage time. But
that's a fair, very fair point. I didn't take that into consideration. That's a good point.
That is, we'll see. But I mean, all six of these guys are awesome, and it wouldn't shock me if they're in any particular order. Those are your top six. I'm going to throw one at you. Best running back duo currently in the NFL.
Best running back duo currently in the NFL. Even though, all right. That's a good question. I'm going to make a case for Seattle. I'm going to make a case for... man, that's a good question. I'm going to start with Seattle. Kenneth Walker, he is coming off a season-ending injury last year, but he was the guy I spoke of last year before the season started as someone to watch out for. He had himself a good year, and then he got hurt. But I expect Kenneth Walker to come into that offense again and not skip a beat, and I'm expecting this Seattle team to be a very good team, by the way. But the addition of Zach Charbonnet to that offense, it just makes so much sense that they're going to have two running backs. No one's going to rush for 1,000. But you ask me, would I prefer a 1,000-yard rusher and a running back that rush for 300, or would I prefer two guys that rush for 900 together? I'm taking that, I think Seattle's running game is going to be something not to be messed with. Secondly, I think it depends on where we see the likes of a Derrick Henry or a Cook go, because I fully believe that Derrick Henry is going to be on another NFL team, and I think Dalvin Cook's going to be another NFL team. If you told me I could put Dalvin Cook and Tony Pollard together, I think that would be the best running back duo in the NFL. You can't take away from what the Eagles do with the number of running backs, and I think bringing in DeAndre Swift and letting Miles Sanders go actually complements that backfield a little more, because now you don't have to worry about the star running back aspect. Now you can literally take the committee approach. So, and in that case, I would say pick two running backs off the Eagles, because they have a very healthy running back field. So yeah, that's where I'm going with on that, man. That's a tough one. That's a tough one, but there's also variables into this question.
When you say about the Eagles, Short and sweet. I call that a running back quartet because whoever the three guys are, they're also going to be running with their quarterback.
Touche.
As far as your take about hypotheticals, should Pollard and a Henry join forces, then yes, they would be a logical answer to potentially be the best running back duo. You have the usual guys like an AJ Dillon comboed with Aaron Jones, but that's not my pick.
No, no.
My personal pick going into this year, out of guys that are already on rosters that we know are playing together, I'm going to go Jamal Williams, Alvin Kamara out in New Orleans. I think with that defense, with that defense that they have, and with that running game they have, and with the emerging Chris Olave entering his sophomore NFL season, I think you have a scenario where Derek Carr, in the words of Brett, is going to finally improve.
Dude, I actually think Derek Carr coming to New Orleans, it helps his career and it gives him the opportunity to kind of write a new chapter in life. Yeah, it was cool to bring in Devontae, but you were still in the same chapter, you know.
They overstocked one position, thinking that it was going to change the many ills that they had all over the field, and that's just not the way football works.
Man, I didn't think about that one. That's a good one, actually. That's a really good one. But it also comes down to what is going to happen with Alvin Kamara this year. With this whole thing about everything being reopened, like, is he going to play a complete season? Are we talking about an Alvin Kamara that plays half the season? So that's the part about it I worry about. But when I think about that duo, oh my God, Jamal Williams and Alvin Kamara, I think it goes back to the Saints of the early 2010s when they had Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. You know, yeah, granted they had Drew Brees, but I mean, they have a good young defense. They still have key pieces there where the Saints team could win. I like that pick. I don't know why I didn't think about that one.
To answer your question, the reason why, or your concern rather, the reason why I think Kamara plays more this year is because of the fact that they went out and got a Jamal Williams, where Kamara could still get you those tough yards, but he's going to be relied on in a big way in the passing game. These two together are going to be good. Jamal Williams is an interesting case because he's changed teams quite frequently. Green Bay, Detroit, now he's in New Orleans, but I think New Orleans is going to be the place where he really finds his home. I'm going to do a twofer. I'm going to throw one more question at you.
Don't throw it at me yet. You brought up a good point. Jamal Williams, the one thing that has been plaguing this Saints offense has been the guy that can carry the load on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. And you put Jamal Williams in that offense and not have to design your offense around.
See a lot less of the
rolling out. Yeah.
See a lot less of the punter.
That is such a good point. That is a very good point. This Saints team might actually win. So they're going to win the South, but they might actually win some games this year. I wouldn't be surprised that they're an 11-win team because of the Jamal Williams factor. That is such a good point.
I'll put it to you like this. They play in a bad division, but they're not a bad team.
No, not at all.
They're actually a good team that plays in a bad division, similar to the Detroit Lions. I'm going to throw you a second question, and then I'm going to ask you to throw two more at me to even that out. This is my second question. Does Daniel Jones finally put up the kind of stat line that Giant fans can be proud of? What I mean by that is there's been a chunk of the fan base who is furious that he got that kind of contract because of the fact that he only had 15 touchdown tosses. I'm the type of person that I count total touchdowns, which would be 22. And my biggest concern is what's our record when he plays. And, my only stat that I care about is wins. But truth be told, there's a divide amongst the fan base on how we feel about Daniel Jones. Anybody who watches my show knows how I feel about him. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that he busts that 30 touchdown plateau?
He may not bust. Oh, are we talking about total touchdowns or passing touchdowns? Because that's, to your point, when we talked about a Daniel Jones, a lot of people forget about the aspect that he brings in the running game, and they focus solely on the passing side.
Yeah, which is ignorant, which is very ignorant.
So that's why when you say 30 touchdowns, are we talking 30 touchdowns passing or 30 touchdowns total?
I guess the question would be total because I'm treating it as a total touchdown situation.
All right. So I think there's, again, with the Giants, it comes down to, can you bring in DeAndre Hopkins? Daniel Jones, to me, is a quarterback that is on the same road, just a little bit further behind as Josh Allen because of the Brian Dable effect. Brian Dable is a smart quarterback coach. And this is a guy that if he's got Daniel's paying attention. Daniel's been through what, 3 offensive coordinators or 4? 4. And this is his first time in his career that he gets back-to-back years.
3 head coaches.
So now he is experiencing stability, something he has not experienced since his playing days at Duke. I think Daniel Jones is going to easily have himself a 30 total touchdown season between what he brings in the running game. If you can, I'm telling you, if you guys add a DeAndre, it helps him so much, and it takes the pressure off of the youth. And now you get to see, there's so much I could see positive for this team. Without DeAndre in the lineup, I still see him as a 30 total touchdown quarterback. I think he'll be along the lines of 24 passing touchdowns. We'll go 9 interceptions, and we'll say 7 rushing touchdowns, because no matter what, inside the red zone, he is still one of the more dangerous quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, your stat line is eerily similar to mine. I was going to say 24 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing scores, which would be a dead on 30.
So I got him at 31. You have him at 30. Yeah, that's the great thing about this, is because I am not a Giants fan. I am a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I will always give a truthful, honest opinion of what I see with that team and not base it solely off of history and this and that. There's a lot of variables you have to take into consideration, especially when it comes to Daniel Jones. Hey, he could be most improved player next year.
There's a distinct possibility. After I saw that they gave it to Geno, I think that, and I'm not taking a crap on Geno. I just thought the criteria for the award in previous years kind of confused me, but that's okay. That is okay.
It confused the hell out of me, because we always brought up the points about most improved player is a player that comes off injury.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you get a DJ out there and say he leads you guys to 11 wins, I mean, you can't argue against that. You really can't.
I tend to agree. Mr. Zappy's having, I think, a sound issue over there. Let's find out where he's going.
That was the water softener coming on.
All good, my guy. All good. You are up for 2 questions, Mr. Zappy. You got time.
All right.
Throw at me now.
All right. So 2 NFL questions. I'm going to focus it on the 2 representatives of the Super Bowl this year, being the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw the Cincinnati Bengals beat Patrick Mahomes 3 times in 1 year, and they were close to winning it in this last year's AFC title game. A lot of people think that the Eagles were able to have an easier road to the Super Bowl because the 49ers beat the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, they kind of had their numbers, what they say. Who are the 2 teams, one AFC, one NFC, the 2 teams that can dethrone the Eagles and the Chiefs as this year's representatives in the Super Bowl?
I'm going to start with the NFC. Once again, we're here for brutal, honest convo. From a familiarity standpoint, I give the Dallas Cowboys the inside track to be the first logical answer to and the reign of the Philadelphia Eagles, mainly because if you look at both their games last year, you have two quarterbacks that are starters that didn't play each other. That was what many football fans were hoping for the NFC title game. That unfortunately didn't happen if you're a Dallas fan. I believe that on a defensive level, the Dallas Cowboys can pretty much hang with the majority of the league. Yes, they do have lapses from time to time, but they are an elite unit. When I think about the quarterback situation, it is a scenario where it's a make or break for the marriage of Mike and Dak. They're either gonna get to the next level, which would be a title game or better, or they're probably both going to leave town together. While I don't necessarily have an opinion on how that's going to play out just yet, I do think from a familiarity standpoint, they have the best chance because at the end of the day, we did see Gardner Minshew and have that kind of game, just like we saw Cooper Rush have that kind of game. I think what I'm trying to say is at different junctures of the season, both those teams showed that it's not just the starting quarterbacks. They could win in different ways. I think my Giants are still a bigger question because of our brutal 7 out of 10, because they would be my second answer, which is funny because we haven't beat the Eagles in a very long time. But I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys, mainly because of my genuine belief that the NFC East is that damn good.
All right. All right. What about the? All right. Give it to me. Give me the AFC.
Okay. In the AFC, I think the popular picks, like every other season, are going to be if the Chiefs won, it's got to be the team that Burrow leads or the team that Allen leads. And while both of those are good answers, they're not the answers that I believe. I think the New York Jets, because of the fact that they have such a damn good defense, you have a rookie in Brees Hall that's going to be coming off that injury, better than ever, hopefully. You got Garrett Wilson. You have the 4-time league MVP coming into New York City his first year. You know, he's already taken over the headlines. He was visible at Ranger and Nick playoff games. I feel that Aaron Rodgers is exactly what the Jets needed. They didn't just basically last year when I looked at them, I said, what do they need to get in the playoffs? They need a competent quarterback. Well, they got more than competent. They got a guy that's going to take you to the table and can be in consideration with these other three teams led by those other three great quarterbacks. My wholehearted opinion, the New York Jets are going to win that division after a slow start. I think it's going to be a little time to get the niche of every bit of it. But Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers have a history. And I believe that the Buffalo Bills, although still a very talented football team, you go revisit those two Jet games last year. That gives me the check mark that with a quarterback, the Jets could handle the Bills. And from a defensive level, I think they can really make Patrick Mahomes work, and I think they could dethrone the Chiefs.
I like that one. That's a good one. I can't argue against those points because it's kind of what we're expecting them to be.
Brutally honest takes, as you can see, I'm a Giant fan.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I look at that team and I think the same thing. And then I think about Buffalo. I kind of think that Buffalo's taking a step back this year.
The window has closed, in my opinion, not completely, because they can. The weird thing about windows closing, I'll make a quick basketball analogy, real quick one. When Shaquille O'Neal was a member of the Orlando Magic, and when Michael Jordan was still playing with the Bulls, the Knicks at best were the third best team in the East, or the third, even if it wasn't by record, that they can be that team. When Shaquille left for the West Coast and Jordan had already retired, that reopened the lane for the Knicks window to reopen. Point to be made is Buffalo, the window's getting smaller, but they still could do it.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. All right. My other question to you. By the way, I still think it's the Bengals to dethrone the Chiefs. I think we're about to witness an NFL where it's between Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow for a little while. And then NFC, yeah, Dallas. And I would have to go with the 49ers. just because I think Kyle Shanahan has everything in place. And when you're talking about a team that is with Sam Darnold and you're still talking like, no, Sam Darnold could run that offense just fine because that offense is designed for a quarterback to do well. This could be a scenario where we're talking about the Ravens of 2000 or the Bears of 85. That's what I look at what a Sam Darnold is. Everything is there for them to do it. All right. So the other question is, it's going to be in relation to you and your team and a player, but a few players. All right. So last year, these numbers, they may ring a bell, they may not. 9.5, 8.64.
8.64. All right.
What do you think those are? 9.5, 8.64.
Is this predicated off of last season?
Yes, this past season we just completed. And I will give you a hint. It's on the defensive side of the ball.
9.5, 8.64. Not sure.
All right. So when y'all took a certain player at number 4 last year at the NFL draft I was present for, it was after the Lions had taken a young man in Aiden Hutchinson. He led the league in 9.5 sacks last year. In second place was James Houston, also a rookie from Detroit. He had 8 sacks. I'm sorry. George Karlaftis, rookie drafted in KC from Purdue, he had 6. Thibodeau had 4, but now Thibodeau played 14 games. The other 2 played 17, and James Houston played 7. Between those 4, which of the 4 has the opportunity to take the next big step to be an all-pro defensive end and be a guy that's sitting there getting 15 sacks?
This is funny. I liken Kayvon to the freakish athleticism on certain layers of his game to a JPP. I liken his sack mate, who unfortunately missed too much time last year, Mr. Ojolari, as a guy who could kind of finesse you to get to the quarterback like an OC. So it's not going to be Kayvon, and I'll tell you why. Kayvon's going to draw the double teams. I think Aziz is going to do better than him in sacks because Kayvon's going to draw more double teams. But having said that, out of these 4, I'm going to go with Houston.
Huh.
Kayvon's going to have an awesome year, though. He's going to make impactful plays that change football games.
I think Kayvon's going to have himself a good year. But I don't know. There's just something about Aiden Hutchinson because you look at the overall aspect, and I think with James Houston and what they did on the defensive side of the ball this offseason, I kind of feel like Aiden Hutchinson's going to be that guy that he's going to blow up for 16, 17 sacks, and James Houston will probably get 8, 9, maybe 10 sacks because of what you alluded to. You have one guy that's going to be your sack master, and you have the other guy that is going to be your Robin, and he's going to get you those 8 to 10 sacks. And when I look at James Houston, while he had himself a phenomenal rookie season, now there's tape. And Aiden Hutchinson was drafted for that reason. I think Aiden Hutchinson is going to be the guy, man. There's just something about this kid. And not only that, it seems like wherever he goes, they win. And now we're starting to witness it with the Lions, which is really crazy.
No, logical, very logical. The thing with Aiden, I think that he may suffer from the stats may suffer a little because of the sheer fact that he is going to get double teamed a ton, similar to Kayvon. And the other reason why with the Giants, with Kayvon versus Ojolari, why I think Ojolari is going to have more sacks, but I think Kayvon might have more pressures, is because if you look at Ojolari's games played versus games missed, but his sack totals, this young man is averaging like a sack a game when he's actually in there. And that is a cool stat. Mm-hmm. That's a stat that you just hope that he could be on the field a little more because we are a better football team when he is on the field. All right.
I like those one. I like those answers. It's crazy that neither of us went George Karlaftis route,
Yeah.
even though that he's right there with Chris Jones. It's really weird.
I'll tell you the truth. I like him, but I don't think he's as impactful as the other guys. That's just my opinion. But I think he's good, though. Like, I think he's a good football player. I saw him at Purdue. I think
Oh,
he's good.
he's a dirty football player, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, I
I mean
know exactly what you mean.
he's doing all the things that don't go on the sheet of paper, where Kayvon and James or Aiden. Well, James, I think, is more of the in between, but between Kayvon and Aiden, their job is to get to the quarterback. Don't worry about the running game so much.
Okay, I got one for you. When you look at last year's playoff teams, and I want you to take into consideration this is based on a expectation level, not just because he made the playoffs last year. Who do you think is the biggest disappointment out of last year's playoff teams? I guess what I'm asking is who takes the deepest fall from grace?
Tampa Bay.
Um, okay, tell me why, and then I'm going to tell you mine.
Well, I mean, when I look at last year's playoff teams, we're talking about Dallas, Philly, New York. I already put emphasis on why I think New York's going to be good this year. You put emphasis why you think Dallas is going to be the team that can dethrone Philly. We've alluded to San Francisco and Seattle. We talked about the Lions, and I can't really put the Vikings in that because I was never impressed by them. So when I look at all the teams and the expectations last year, Vikings were not expected to do well while the Buccaneers were. You had the greatest quarterback of all time leading your way. And yes, he had his offseason problems with his wife and all that. I don't think that's enough to justify taking him out of that conversation. I say Tampa Bay because when you have that offense and defense and you could barely muster, what was it, 8 wins this year? Like after you just won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, I think it's Tampa Bay.
I respect your opinion. The reason why I don't consider that the deepest fall of grace, though, is because they did make the playoffs with a losing record. So I think it was already starting to sputter.
You cop out.
My team that I think is going to have a disappointing fall from grace, and they may very well still be a playoff team, but I have a hunch that they might actually miss the playoffs this year. This might be the shocker. I got the San Francisco 49ers underachieving this year. The Seattle Seahawks taking that division, and the San Francisco 49ers potentially missing the playoffs because of the uncertainty at the quarterback position.
Oh gosh, I know. And as much as I agree with you, I just look at the fact that it's not Josh Johnson. It's, it looks like it's going to be Brock Purdy. If it is, wow.
Yeah, wow, I was right.
So you still drafted Trey Lance at number 3, and you have a former top 4 pick in the NFL draft in 2018 right there, who, if you really look at Sam Darnold's career, when he's expected to do a lot, he doesn't do well, but when he's expected to not really do anything, he does well.
This is one of the most rare situations where you have guys on completely different spectrums. Sam Darnold was a high draft pick. Trey Lance was a guy that they moved a lot of capital to go get. Brock Purdy was on the Tom Brady spectrum of an NFL draft. So there's like a lot of completely converse moving parts. The thing that Sam Darnold has in common with a lot of Cleveland quarterbacks, a lot of New York Jet quarterbacks for that matter, even the young man who's getting replaced by Aaron Rodgers right now, is that one could make an argument that he never had a chance to have the right coaching to elevate his skill level. You did mention that, conversely, like about Sam Darnold, that you think he could be all right. While I think you made good points, I still got to see it.
Imagine this, though, that this 49er team, to kind of back up what you're saying, and imagine this is a team that wins 7, 8, 9 games, and they're a Jimmy Garoppolo difference away from making the playoffs, and Jimmy Garoppolo leads the Raiders to the playoffs. Oh, my God, imagine that. And imagine it's a season while Brock Purdy just rode the high of being in that moment, and Trey Lance never lived up to it. And they're completely in flux looking for that quarterback.
What I find comical about what the 49ers did is that I think you moved way too much capital on a
Way
player
too
on
much.
a player who's a project, being Trey Lance. You bring in a Brock Purdy, who, in my opinion, is a younger version of a Jimmy Garoppolo. I really do believe what I just said. I really mean that. He's a game manager who's not going to lose you the game, but can he win you the game? That is still yet to be determined, because I'm not going to take that short sample size, albeit it was impressive. Jimmy Garoppolo's won a lot in this league. He's played in the Super Bowl, and to be honest with you, if one of his defensive backs catches a lame duck pass by Matthew Stafford, he may have played in the second Super Bowl. The man wins games. The man was backing up the greatest winner in this league at the quarterback position. And I think the 49ers treated him very poorly for the amount of games he's won. This wasn't even the Alex Smith situation. This might even be worse. Um, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be okay in Vegas with or without.
Dude, he's in Vegas. We're talking about the best looking quarterback in the NFL who made Jane Andrews blush on live TV. He's going to be just fine.
Yeah. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Aaron Andrews, not Jane Andrews.
Yeah. I know you.
Yeah.
I know you meant. No. Jimmy Garoppolo has won a lot in this league. I just think it's baffling that you're going to literally bet. I mean, I'll put it to you like this: if Garoppolo didn't get the runaround 6 ways to Sunday, would he have suited up last year for that NFC title game instead of having to ask Josh Johnson, who's an avid Madden player, to go play Madden again and learn your new teammates? Shout out Josh Johnson. I'm not making fun of the man. To be able to play in this league for that many years, you do have value.
Here's my little hot take that Brett might not like. If Jimmy Garoppolo was never traded to the San Francisco 49ers and remained a Patriot, and you paid those two together, the Patriots may have not only been still winning that division, they may have made one more Super Bowl after Tom Brady.
It might not be the same thing because of the fact that Brady has so many damn rings, but I liken that situation similarly to what the New York Giants did in the 90s when you allowed Jeff Hostetler to leave only to cut Phil Simms a short year later, which was definitely baffling. Hostetler went to the Raiders. Simms got cut the next football season.
Garoppolo was the guy that the media was talking about Dallas drafting, but in the second round, and the Patriots said, "No, we're going to just go ahead and grab him." I think that's the bigger one.
It's similar to the man that he came after, because Alex Smith was a winner in this league. He had the comeback feel-good story a couple of years ago during the pandemic with the Washington football team, who are now the Commanders, who are probably going to be renamed again. All right.
But Alex Smith is not in the same conversation. Or I'm sorry, Jimmy Garoppolo is not in the same conversation as an Alex Smith and a Patrick Mahomes.
Hey. All right, moving it along.
I got one for you. You ready for this?
Fire.
The most unrealistic, realistic Super Bowl matchup of the 2023-2024 season.
The most unrealistic, and then
the most realistic, unrealistic. Because we're talking about teams that we believe are going to make the playoffs, but teams that may make the playoffs be one and done.
Okay, I got you. Well, given the fact that the Detroit Lions have a very favorable schedule, I feel that they could be in the 13 or 12 win plateau. 13 would be the complete top out. But I view them as a team that could be a 1 seed and crap the bed in their first playoff game, because of the fact that I think the power is in the East. And I think that you have 2 teams in the West that have a lot to say. The Seattle Seahawks are going to be better than last year. I'm not sure if the 49ers are going to be better than last year. That remains to be revealed. But the point is, the Lions can essentially be this year's Vikings.
All right, so you got the Lions playing against who?
No, assuming they made the Super Bowl?
Yeah, this is the most realistic, unrealistic Super Bowl matchup. Like two
I,
teams.
I
One's
got
gonna
you.
be,
I got you. You got to make a case that it's possible, but logically you're like, nah. Okay, I heard. So yeah, the Lions. Okay, and then in the AFC, formerly the San Diego Superchargers, because
Ooh.
because this is the thing, right? The Kellen Moore effect could very well work over there, and not for nothing. If you're basing this on pure talent alone, when you look at that Charger roster versus that Chief roster, you can make a logical argument that the Chargers have just as much talent.
Oh man. The NFC, I think it's a pretty easy choice, but I'm going to give the second team. Yeah, Detroit, I agree with you. The other team I'm going to say, and you're going to be like, shut the fuck up, is the New York Football Giants. The reason why is because if you can get D-Hop in that offense and continue to be the team that everyone sleeps on, as we've seen many times, New York Giants, if they just need to be in there, and that's it. The other team, yes, the Lions. The Lions very well could be the number one seed in the NFC this year with 12 to 13 wins. And I think their defense is going to be a much improved defense. So I think that the Lions are probably going to be the 1 or 2 seed this year. AFC though, I wanted to see if you were going to go with the Chargers or you were going to go with the Jaguars. They're both two teams you can argue for, and I think you could also argue for Pittsburgh. But I'm going to go with the Jaguars because of the way the game went against the Chargers. And I think that's a carryover effect that the Jaguars are going to ride that high, insert Calvin Ridley into that offense. I think they're going to be a really good team. And when you play in probably the worst division in football, that tends to lead to good things. And plus, they have one of the easier schedules in the NFL. Would not surprise me to see if we're talking about this Jaguars team being the same Jaguars team a few years back when we saw Tom Brady go into Jacksonville to advance to the Super Bowl. But I think this Jaguar team has a little more class to them. You don't have the big heads like Jalen Ramsey there that can affect the locker room. I like this Jaguars team, man. I like Trevor Lawrence, what he brings to the table. You talk about Travis Etienne. I think it could very well be a Super Bowl of cats. The Lions and the Jaguars facing off in one of the most unpredictable, someone's going to get their first trophy type of Super Bowl.
All right. First head coach to get fired this year.
Ron Rivera.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I can't. Think about it. Are we gonna? Oh, actually, I'm gonna give one for each conference: Ron Rivera and Mike McDaniel from the AFC.
It's so funny because this is the thing. We all know that the Tua doctor is fired and good because he has no business around professional athletes. But the other thing is, Mike McDaniel, I've been super critical of him. It's cool. You got Waddle, you got Hill. Tua is more talented than people give him credit for. I really hope that he stays healthy. But this is the thing. No commitment to running the football. On a previous show, we mentioned that Dalvin Cook could potentially be heading there. That could change his commitment to running the rock because no matter how many awesome route runners and speed guys you have, it doesn't matter what level of football we're playing. If we're playing peewees, high school, pros, whatever, you have to run the rock when it counts in January into February. If you can't do that, your team is not going to win more times than not.
And you have to protect your quarterback. And you
bring in kind of important.
And you bring in a Dalvin Cook into that offense, and you now turn Tua into a dropping back 25 to 30 times as opposed to 45 times.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a star running back with this. It was what we talked about last year with Raheem Mostert and what was his name that they traded for from the 49ers as well. Anyways, but you bring in a Dalvin Cook to team up with a Raheem Mostert.
Albert Wilson?
Jeff Wilson.
Jeff Wilson.
So you bring, that's what Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert were brought into, to be just that. But that didn't work because in San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan is just slightly a better coach than Mike McDaniel.
And not
Let's
for
be real.
nothing. And not for nothing. You also had a better offensive line.
And that too. But you bring in Dalvin, team him up with Raheem. I think if you can bring Tua's passing down, you have to protect the guy because he's not a bad quarterback. He just can't drop back to pass that many times.
Do you think it's a coincidence that New England Patriot Mike Gesicki, who last year was a Miami Dolphin, suddenly became exclusively a blocker? It's because they needed to figure out a way to help every possibility because Gesicki is not just a good pass blocker. That man is a guy who can make plays in the open field. I have a feeling that his new destination in New England, he may be relied upon heavily because of the sheer fact that you have Mac Jones there. And I'm going to call maybe a bit of a shocker. Hunter Henry might get cut.
Ooh. Ooh, that's a good one, actually. I can't argue against it.
Maybe. Or you keep them both. I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's only so much Devontae Parker could do. Shout out Brett Bandick, New England Patriot fan.
They got Juju. Hey, they're still my dark horse to get DeAndre, though.
Well, oddly enough, they're my dark horse to get Derrick Henry. We'll see how that plays out. They get Derrick Henry, that changes the narrative around there and what they can and can't do. Let me comb it through. Okay, I got one. I'll throw you one. Is Jordan Love gonna be good? The Green Bay Packers have had a great habit of always getting the right quarterback to replace a legend. Or at least during our lifetimes.
All right. So when you say good, are you talking about this year alone, or are you talking about throughout his career?
I'm talking about the grand scheme of things. Is this a guy that can do what the two guys before him did, and that's hoist the Lombardi?
I'm going to say yes. Here's why. The NFL has continued to evolve, and it's evolved into an NFL that supports the game of a Jordan Love. And when you look at what the Green Bay Packers have done throughout the last couple of years, whether it be on the receiving side or the running side, the line, the defense, they decided, go look at this year's draft. They decided that they were going to continue to build on that defense, and they weren't going to go crazy to try to overspend for a receiver. And you still have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I think this offense is primed for Jordan Love to have himself a successful career.
Not to mention Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson.
Exactly. So I think Jordan Love is going to have himself a career that's going to give Packers fans something to continue to talk about. But now the sad thing is, whenever you say a successful career in Green Bay, it's been one Super Bowl.
Indeed.
So what are we talking about here? Another one Super Bowl, or are we talking about multiple Super Bowls? Are we talking about a dynasty, What
I would love to see, because as many of you that follow my show know that my late father was a diehard Green Bay Packer fan, and another person super dear to our heart, Mr. John Olson, who is the fantasy commissioner of our league and also a great friend of ours, huge Packer fan. So given the fact that you're talking about two surefire Hall of Famers, one's already in, Mr. Favre, one will be in whenever he decides to retire and, has his minimum years, that would be Aaron Rodgers. I don't know where Zappy went. That's okay. Jordan Love will win maybe one, and I say maybe because I just don't have enough that I've seen yet between college and the the pro game to assume that Jordan Love is going to hoist a Lombardi trophy. Until Zappy comes back, we have about 6 minutes left. I'm going to hit you with a couple of other hot takes. We mentioned coaches that could potentially be fired. I'm going to go Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans could be in danger of losing his job. He's actually a coach that I think very highly of. But I do believe that Mike Vrabel could potentially lose his job this year. It's going to be a tough situation in Tennessee, assuming Derrick Henry gets cut, moves on to greener pastures. Will Levis, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the pick. And Malik Willis out of Liberty, he's just not it. So I'm not sure that the Tennessee Titans necessarily have what it takes to get where they need to go while still being coached by Mike Vrabel. That is just my opinion. Zappy, just to speed you up, you got lost for a second there. Mike Vrabel is another candidate that I was doing a hot take that I think could be canned this year. And is a coach that I actually respect very much. But I just think that between the questionable pick in terms of character with a Will Levis, and on the flip side, no questions of character with Malik Willis, but questions of ability. It's almost like, you know what I'm saying? Because the character is definitely with Willis. He's a very likable young dude. But as far as Levis goes, he's kind of got a bit of the watch Draft Day, folks, with the late great Chadwick Boseman and Mr. Kevin Costner, and then come back and be like, okay, that dude that the Browns didn't draft. Yeah, that's Will Levis. Just saying. Or maybe even a Zach Wilson.
Dude, could you imagine, though? We're talking about Ron Rivera and Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, dude. Like, those two names
awesome
alone.
Coaches.
They are, but they might not be matching up to now.
They're also Super Bowl champions as players because Ron Rivera won a Super Bowl with resident guest of the show, Idris. His uncle won a Super Bowl with the Bears with Ron Rivera. And Mr. Vrabel won with the Patriots.
Dude, it's just crazy. But I think it just goes to show how much this game has evolved and how much not only do the players evolve with it, but the coaches also need to evolve. And Mike Vrabel and Ron Rivera kind of still have the same system, same mindset over the last few years. And that's why we're now talking about the Jaguars being a team that can win. We're talking about, other teams. And it's just because it's like you have to adapt with it. And it's sad, man.
I'm going to throw this at you before we get out of here. We'll each give an answer before we get out of here. We are the defending champions. Mr. Zappy and myself are the defending champions of the Cheddar and the Sun League. The events almost turned tragic that went down in Cincinnati altered a lot of fantasy leagues last year. Most importantly, DeMar Hamlin's okay. That's what we really care about. Secondly, Zappy and I split the league earnings because, quite frankly, we don't know what was going to happen, and it's only right that we split it. We are the co-champions going into this new fantasy league, and my question to you, Zap, who is your first pick if you get the number one overall pick?
Jesus. First pick, number one. I hate number one overall.
I know.
Oh, God.
I'm not the biggest fan of number one either, but I have to ask, who is the best fantasy player right now? Or who's going to be this year going in?
Gosh, man, I don't know.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
I'm going to go. Well, that's such a crappy question because the answer should be CMC based on the fantasy perspective. But who do I think is going to have a good fantasy year? I think Breece Hall is going to have himself a phenomenal fantasy season, especially when you insert Aaron Rodgers to that offense. So CMC's got to be the number one pick, just going based on fantasy football is also popularity and what you're doing. And Christian McCaffrey, he had himself a very successful season.
Absolutely.
Even with the 49ers. So CMC is number one.
CMC, I would have to say, is usually the safest pick. And no, I would not draft this guy at number one, who I'm going to mention, but I'm going to give you my gut hunch. Rookie running back, Atlanta Falcons, Mr. Bijan Robinson is going to lead the NFL in rushing yards this year.
But would you draft him number one? That's the question.
No. So to answer your question, the player that I'm going to draft number one, I'm a creature of habit. I was able to split a fantasy championship with you last year with the first overall pick in the Cheddar and the Sun League. Richie Hicks Jr. selects Austin Eckler. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I already knew it was coming.
We are coming up on the 30-second mark. Zappy, anything you want to say quickly?
Dude, I can't wait till football starts.
Neither can I.
Training camp is literally a little over a month away.
We really hope that all of you enjoyed this show. It's brutal. It's honest. It's our questions and concerns. Until next time, I am Richie. He is Zappy.